Well, everyone, welcome back, and thank you for joining us here at Reality Hub. It's Rob here, and I wanted to kick things off with some recent contemplations. Well, I suppose they're recent, but I guess it's more since we last joined you. But how is your reality going? It's been a while since I've said that. And, well, for me, these are just some of the things that have come into my awareness that I just wanted to share, and hopefully, it'll bring some comfort, maybe some, it might, maybe you're going through this as well. So these times are crazy, right? These times are pretty crazy. We've been through some crazy times. And I feel like collectively at this point in time, we're in a kind of a liminal space, sort of like a pause after everything that we've kind of been going through as a humanity in the last, 2.5 years, going on 3 years. So I think overall we can agree that we're going through like a collective level or like a major evolutionary process as a humanity, as a species. And I'm sure if you're listening to us here on Reality Hub, you're that way inclined. You want to evolve, you want to grow, you're a seeker, and you're curious. You're curious to know more about what it means to be human. So I do believe that this time right now is a really profound transformational time on Earth. And it's like, as humanity is evolving, it's going through this birthing process. And whenever there's a birth, a process, it's painful. Growth is painful. You're at the gym and you want to grow your muscles, it's painful. So there's got to be a certain amount of pain and suffering that we're going through. And I know a lot of people have been going through that on many different levels. So, as we enter into something new, we've got to replace the old with the new. So there's that process, right? So, I feel profoundly what's playing out right now on the macro is also playing out in the micro within us. So, profound transformations. And for me, there's been this sense of like, wow, I'm feeling a little bit lost, discombobulated, and I'm trying to process this all. And because there's this paradigm that is shifting and changing, it's like, how do I fit in? How do I fit into society? And so in this liminal space, what I've been doing is I've allowing myself to integrate and to reflect back to me the things that I need to work on as a human being, as an individual, as a spiritual being having this human experience. So wherever you're at on that point, I think one thing I've learned is not to judge yourself. We're all at different places and stages, if you like. So I'm learning to give myself more compassion, more kindness, more understanding. And in so doing that, I'm also doing that to the people around me. And I think the more we can do that, it speeds up this process we're going through. Because if you've been through something traumatic, for instance, like a lot of people have, because of everything that's played out, you've got to kind of heal from that. You kind of work your way through it. And I think we're all doing that in our own way. So in a nutshell, there's a lot of, disintegration going on with societal structures. There's a lot of stuff going on within our own being on that level. And I think it's an opportunity for us as a humanity to evolve and grow and to work on that stuff, to do what I call the involution, so the inward journey of everything that's sort of happening on the outside world, because ultimately what's happening within us is happening outside, is happening in the outside reality. So one last thing I just wanted to just say as well, that it's okay if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling confused, disconnected, depressed, feeling all those human emotions, because that's a normal thing. And I think in the liminal space, it's a good opportunity to give yourself rest, to give yourself that time to reflect and to contemplate, because there's nothing wrong with creating some space and to allow your own intelligence and your own guidance to to listen to that, because there's been a lot of distraction and there's been a lot of noise. So yeah, there's so many shifts happening within my being. If it's happening with you guys out there, just trust the process. Trust that this is a tough time. It's acknowledging that it's been a really tough time for a lot of people, and all you can do is put one foot in front of the other, and keep trusting in the grand scheme of things.
And welcome back to Reality Hub.
Indeed.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and
I used to say that when it had been 3 weeks.
Yeah, and but in some ways it feels very like present, and here we are again. So much has happened, yet here we are.
It feels like yesterday, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's a funny thing like that with time.
Today we're sitting outside.
We are.
I can hear the birds chirping in my headphones, which means they must be present here in nature with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful sunny day. I have an orange fruit jus in my hand, and we've been enjoying a cider. And we're joined beside us with a cider, but not drinking one, is young producer Maya. Say hi, Maya. It's good to have you here.
Hello, fellow Reality Hub listeners.
Hey, Maya.
Thank you, Maya. So much has gone on since we reconnected to our own podcast, and I suppose I feel as though I should have an excuse, a reason, an explanation, because a lot of people who know us personally would say, hey, when are you doing your podcast again? And the truth is, the way we've always been is, well, we do it when we feel that we have something to say. And there's been a lot going on in the world which I could comment on, but the better part of me needs just to shut up when I'm only commenting on the noise, right? And I'm seeing things that are part of the noise and the contrasts and the drama and the conspiracy theories and all the bits and pieces. And I've gone down plenty of rabbit holes in the past, as many of the listeners of this show have, thinking about those things. And sometimes there's just no need to comment on it when other people are commenting on it and discovering things so well. But we've always been about uncovering the inner truth of our programming and examining what is real and what makes us tick, and what is the programming and what is part of the social psychosis that we buy into versus what is who we really are. And in that truth lies the reason why I've actually kept quiet and to myself for a while. Because I think it's important that if you're going to talk about these things on this topic, on this kind of podcast, that you feel whole in yourself, that you're actually doing those things. And so I've been examining my inner world and what's important to me. And sometimes that process takes silence, it takes contemplation, and also you might be caught up in your own things for a while. I'm happy to tell you guys that we've had a baby.
Yeah.
Which might be the easier excuse. It might be the easier one to say, yeah, well, haven't been here because we've had a little boy.
But you've had a lot on your plate.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Right. And if you've followed our podcast and you've listened to the episodes where we've talked about the struggle to get to where we are now, if you remember the one which told the story of Bridget's journey in a miscarriage, to now have our little Marshall bear with us in the world is wonderful.
Yeah.
And we're so pleased that he's made it here. And it's changed my life in ways that sometimes when I zone out and I reflect, or I'm just lost in my thoughts, I come crashing back to reality a moment later and I go, oh, that's right, I'm a dad.
Yeah.
I forgot for a moment that I was a dad.
Yeah.
Because you have this little creature in your life that's so important to you and you do anything for, but then you have a moment of selfish just sitting there thinking about something in your own world, whether that's what you might watch on Netflix tonight or whether it's something significant or future planning, and then you go, oh, I forgot I was a dad. Because to be fair, I've lived my whole life not being a dad, and now I am one, and I'm incorporating and integrating that reality.
Precisely.
And it's super important to me. And my whole life, people have said to me, oh, you'll make a great dad. And I'm trying to prove that that's true. So I don't know if I ever will.
Well, having shared time with Marshall and obviously Bridget and obviously you, Steve, and seeing you in action, I can definitely say, I can say this: you won't make a great dad. You are a great dad. It's in reality.
Thanks,
yeah. But we kind of knew that. But I suppose it's like anything, something theoretical, and then when it becomes a practical reality, it's like, well, how do you navigate that? How do you cope? And I suppose every parent has their own inward, journey and process, and it is a process. It's you're trying to do the best that you can at any given moment, and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience, and always trying to do the right thing. And it's always, what I see with you guys, it's always coming from a place of love and intention. So, and I think that's the most important thing.
Well, full credit to Bridget, because she does things I just cannot do biologically, and it's in her makeup.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been a major shift for you. I mean, I was saying the other day, or it was last night actually, that it's important with, in these times that you talked about the noise and the distraction and the drama, and it's all there, as we've spoken about in previous episodes, to sort of apprehend your consciousness and your attention and your energy, right? And we talk about down programming and the fundamentals of who are we, why are we here, what's our purpose. And those are always like the primordial big questions.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's having that curiosity and that desire for truth, whatever truth may be, because that can be that's a hot topic with the distortion of truth, and the information that's out there and the accessibility of truth. But I think the truth that is important is your own inner truth. So it's going inward and not relying on Google and not relying on Wikipedia and not relying on what this expert says, and because there's so much information out there. And the liminal space is the time for things to settle, to do the inward processing, and to sort of quieten things so that you hear your own intuition, your own guidance, your own voice, your own inner beingness, which, let's face it, most people are just super distracted and busy with life, with the program, with society.
100%.
And that's the way we've been programmed. So
yeah.
And it's one of those paradoxes, or I guess it is, where it's that whole thing, like you don't have the time to meditate, right? And it's like, well, if you don't have the time, well, that's when you need to spend an hour. You don't have 10 minutes. Well, okay. So it's that whole thing.
Don't have the time to exercise. That's when you need to do it.
Yeah, and a big thing for me is nourishment. What nourishes your soul is really scrolling and buying into all the drama and watching the news and doing all that is, and even I get it. You want to have time out and relax and watch Netflix or watch a good movie. But what are you doing to nourish your own being and getting back to a more natural state?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I mean, we're heading on a path that is very much technology based, and it's infiltrating our daily lives, and it's very useful, obviously. But it comes down to the relationship again. What's your relationship to technology? What's your relationship to your diet, your consumption of news, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of levels to it, obviously.
Where did you first hear the phrase liminal space?
I don't really know. I always liked it. Yeah. It it might have been, if I had to guess, like it might have come from a book. I remember reading a book when I was a little bit lost and confused and going through a transitional phase, and it was called I think it was called Lost in Transition or something. And
Right.
because we go through these chapters in life, and where you reevaluate things, and so you lose a career, you lose a relationship. We're constantly going through these in between phases of not knowing, of uncertainty, and I guess as humans we like to have certainty. We like to know. And then what's happened in recent times, there was so much uncertainty. Like the world was turned upside down. And as a species, I think that's not what we're kind of used to, because we're used to having structure and these things to hold on to. But I think that's useful, but at the same time I feel it also puts you out of flow in some ways of going with things and just processes that I suppose uncertainty creates fear and anxiety. It's a survival thing, right? So it's a hard one to really have faith and trust in a bigger picture in your soul and in those more, I suppose, what do you call them? Can't think of the word. Esoteric, yeah. Esoteric ideas and ideology, which is, but ultimately, it's I suppose a survival mechanism where, let's say you don't have a job and you can't, you don't have money. You rely on money, so it's survival stuff or whatever. So, and I think a lot of that over the course of the last few years has really amplified it, and really. I'd like to think that, a lot of people would have sort of reevaluated how they're living their lives and their reality and questioned it.
I think people have. I mean, even if you don't view the world the way I do, which is, let's just say, alternative, even if you've spent time over the last couple of years in a job that, or prior to that you didn't really like, the pandemic will have changed your approach to what you value, what you prioritize, and excuse me, that drink was good. But it would change the way you perceive even just work, like at the basics of human existence as an adult. What you value and what you put priorities on must have changed, because if you can go through life and suddenly you're locked down and you can't travel and be places, and I think you said this to me the other night, we were sitting in the sauna and chatting about how this time has pushed people through their own evolution, and I think their own development. How did you put it?
Well, I see it to those people that as a catalyst.
Yeah.
Like a trigger point or a catalyst for a next phase of evolutionary growth.
Right.
But I feel that it depends what path you're on and where you're at. So it comes down to how you're, like you said, that's your reality, and that's what you take away from it. It's like anything. It's like one person will travel to a different city and experience a culture and have a totally different experience to the next person, depending on what you're focused on, depending on what you're there for. And it depends on what lens you're viewing the reality.
Yeah.
So if you mentioned alternative approach, or you don't align necessarily to the mainstream narrative of events because you have alternate information and alternative lenses, if you like, to view it through a different reality.
I certainly do.
So something came up the other day where I think the quote was, I think no time in history you can be standing next to someone and they have a whole different reality. It's like they're in a different world, literally. So you could communicate and say, hey, it's nice day today, beautiful weather, isn't it? And you can have a conversation, a transaction. But they'll be in a totally different consciousness. I think we can jump into the whole...
Let alone their own different echo chamber.
Yes.
In their own social media.
Bubble of... Right. Yeah. So...
However, the algorithms serving up their YouTube videos will be different to mine.
Exactly. Preferences and stuff. And then you mentioned that, and then you realize how much control there is, how much manipulation, how much behind the scenes stuff is happening that people are slowly becoming aware of and awakening to.
Yeah.
So basically your reality has just been completely shifted. And I used the analogy a little while ago. It's like the snow globe effect, where you shake it up and it's like everything's just been shaken up, and you can see all the snow, in the snow globe.
That's right, yeah.
And you can actually
Which for our Northern Hemisphere listeners is more appropriate than ever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just as an analogy. But once again, it's where you're at, and everyone's going to have a different interpretation and different experience. But the reality is there were people that obviously, lost. You talked about jobs and stuff, lost jobs and
Yeah, that's right. And so I guess to please carry on with what you're saying, but just to wind up my bit that led to that is, even if you haven't got the sort of alternative beliefs that I have, and you don't live with caution to the jab, and you're fully vaxxed up the wazoo, you're going to look at the world differently than you did several years ago, just purely based on what you can and can't do for work now, and the way work is conducted, and whether you prioritize your family or not. And whether you can actually be with them if the world shuts down again, because that would be one of the new wounds for people and one of the new fears. But going back to what you were saying,
a few things just came to me there, because people might be listening to this and go, "Oh, you're still talking about what happened in the past, and you're maybe giving your energy back to it." But sure. I'm doing this intentionally because it's leading towards where I feel there's this sort of post-traumatic effect, which we mentioned about the liminal space. It's like a pause.
Yeah, that's huge. A big pause.
Because seemingly reality's gone back to sort of a certain level of normal, but it hasn't, because in certain countries.
Do you mean that when we just go down to the supermarket, we're not required to wear masks anymore and that kind of thing, that it isn't just returned to normal? No, I'm pushing your buttons on purpose.
Yeah. Well, this is just something, my own experience, what I've tuned into. It's like the paradigm is shifted, and this is the post-traumatic effects of what we as a humanity have been through. And there is this sense that you can't go back to how it was, because it's not how it was. But in order to grow, you need to be able to transform and heal and let go and surrender and go through that, to go through whatever you need to get through to heal. And so I think, from my understanding, the people that I know, they've all gone through their own individual experiences.
Yeah.
And they're still processing. In other words, we're not out of the woods. It's still, there's still a lot to be played out. And I think it's stupid not to sort of push that aside. Oh no, everything's just great.
Well,
which is not to say you can't coexist and and find solutions and put your energy towards the things you want to create. But there is still this. I think I said it with the penny this afternoon.
Well, I was just going to say.
Yeah, that it's hard to engage with society if your reality has changed, but society is still functioning on a certain level. You're out of resonance. You're out of alignment.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned, or Penny mentioned this afternoon. She's a friend of ours. I'm not going to name drop like that and expect anyone to know exactly who we mean. But we spoke to Penny and said, "You got to come on the show." And she said, "Yeah, I'll come on soon." But when we were catching up with her this afternoon, she mentioned that there's a dystopia still to come, that we're heading towards a dystopia. So back to what you were saying, you can't, in this pause, just think that that was as bad as it's going to get. In some ways, I think there is more to come that we have to process through, because until we all wake up, what was it you said? When we all wake up, it all stops.
Well, I think what I said was, okay, so we're, and Penny made a really good point that, I said, obviously we're creative beings, so we can create things. We can create a reality. We can create. Oh, it's infinite. We can. You just look around you, everything that's been created. But in terms of a humanity consciousness, it's like, well, it's up to us as a collective to shift that, to use just for sake of an example or for explanation purposes. If we're at a low, if there's darkness in the world, if there's the bad things going on, which we know there are, which is the duality of life,
Sure.
good and bad, hot and cold, you know the story, then what we give our attention to and energy to should be towards the good things, and that helps shift. So if you're acting in a loving way, in a kind way, in a truthful way, in an honorable way, you know, love, honor, and respect, and you have no ulterior motive, then that's the best parts of humanity. But we know that there are people that are not doing that for various reasons. So I think where we got to is when enough people sort of get to that level of awakening or awareness, then that's going to... Think about this. A perfect example, you go into a party, if everyone's having a really good time, is you feel energy. But if you walk into a room and there's been a domestic or an argument, there's a lower energy, right? There's a tension. It's the same thing because it's all just energies, but it just ramp it up to a collective where there are millions of people, and it's to try and put it in a simplistic term. But you're right. The more people that are aware and awake and are not creating division and not fighting and being good people and all that stuff, then it's gonna have that effect because that's the energy that you're giving out.
The way you said it today was quite profound. I wish I could remember what it was. It was something like we've all manifested this reality as a collective. Yeah, we're allowing things to happen as a collective. And then when we all wake up, that collective reality changes, and it's as simple as that. So if you're out there wishing things went the way they were, maybe your addition to that collective is to help change that consciousness. What part can you play? And I'm not talking about you have to do big things. It's like on a real individual level, on a day-to-day level. I mean, I didn't experience... You can glow light, you can glow brightly. Yeah. And that's a change that affects other people. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example. It's really cheesy, right? Yeah, cool. So I was walking to the supermarket last week. This is something practical you can do. Okay. And I said, on my walk, I'm going to walk through this park. I am going to say hi to every single person and smile and just say morning to every single person. Cool. So, and I think I bumped into like 5 people on the way up. Yeah. And then when I was in the supermarket, I just did my thing, and then I walked back down and I was going to do the same thing. Guess what happened? What? Before I could even say it, people were saying, morning. I was going, oh, beat me to it. So it was like I was it was really it's like quantum trippy. Manifestation. Yeah. And I just thought, and I did it with a genuineness, like morning, and not because I needed a response. It was just like that was the zone I was at, and I thought, nice. Whoa! And then everyone I passed said morning before I could, and it might have been I think it was only about 3 people, but I thought, whoa! So there's something in there, that old saying, smile, and the whole world smiles with you or to you or something. Yeah. But yeah, and it's just a simple thing. I thought, wow, that's crazy. That's just such a simple thing to do, and it puts you in a different state. It might be a long bow for me to draw, but when I listen to things about the idea of manifesting the reality you want and seeing it come true before it happens and living in that state, is that not some kind of small version of that? In a sense, you expect that it's quite a simple thing. You have absolute and utter belief and faith in the fact that you're going to light up a few people's lives because you're going to say good morning. And as you said, you're not doing it for some narcissistic reason because you need them to say hi to you. You're just going to do it. And in part of doing it, you're saying to yourself, I will be raising my vibration. I see myself raising my vibration to come out of myself and be kind to people and light up the world of those around me. But in so thinking it, so it is done. Right? Instantly, the moment you've thought that, seen it in your mind, believed it, it's already happening now. Yeah. Like it's shifting the future and this present moment. And I think about that because when I've been listening to things over this last year about manifesting and changing your reality and seeing it happen in your mind and living as though it's happened before it's happened, that's a bit of a mind fuck. But it is that. That's an example of it. You know, I mean, seeing yourself driving a Tesla, if that's what you want, before you have one is, it's a bit mental, isn't it? It's like, what? But in a sense, living as though you are in that state of happiness. I think, you know, if you want more wealth and money in your life, I don't think you can go and live as though you have it and just start spending willy-nilly when you literally maybe don't have it to spend. But what you can do is you can live and feel and feel the comfort of, choose to feel the warmth and grounded feeling of having enough money for anything you need. Choose to feel what that feels like, because that's what that version of you would feel like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you're bringing that into reality before it happens. And I mean, I'm speaking these thoughts out as they sort of occur to me as good ideas. So I'm just saying them as they occur. It's not like I'm speaking from experience, but I think these are nice approaches to that.
Yeah. It was just a tangible exercise, if you like, that I felt intuitively to do. I just felt called to do it. I was like, I'm just going to do that. And it was like maybe my greater being or whatever was saying, hey, you should do this because there's a lesson in here.
Yeah.
But it was like that was the energy I was giving out. So you sort of, the universe responds in whatever manner. But I think, you know, what you were saying, like, you want to get the Tesla, you want to get these things because it's going to make you feel a certain way. But the irony is that you can feel that certain way without those things. So if you're really if you want to be happy, it's not the job, it's not the relationship.
Yeah.
It feels like it is. It's not the new iPhone or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like it's a program, a consumeristic program, where an aspirational program to say, hey, if you get this, you're going to feel happy and successful and all that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have these things and they're nice to experience, but believe it or not, you can experience all those emotions anyway without actually having those things. Yeah. Moments of contentment, moments of just pure, I mean, I don't know if anyone...
Yeah, the word emotions gets a bad rap, but you're right, it is all those emotions. Grounded, secure, content, free to think creatively, that moment of allowing your brain to sort of flit across different ideas and imaginary reality, which you don't have, and you can't be in that state and in that emotion when you're stressed.
Yeah, because we're in this...
but you can have it.
And the world and the events are really good at bringing you into that fear state, in that low-level anxiousness state.
But by being in those other states that I just listed off, you bring and manifest those into your reality.
Yeah.
And then you open up to more of that to come to you.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because you've actually got to put yourself into that place almost to have arrived at it before you've taken the journey. And so it brings you to that place.
Yeah.
And what is it they say in the spirit world? You think of the place you want to be, and there you are.
Okay.
Right. So if I want to be in Egypt, I think of the pyramids, and I'm there. And I think of them before I take the trip, but I've arrived now. And in the spirit world, with the lack of physical restriction, that's all it takes. Think where you want to be, and so you're there. But in the physical world, which is, a construct of the spiritual with certain time-space realities built into it, there is no harm thinking of where it is you want to be before you begin, because that guides your North Star for it coming to you.
Sure. Yeah, well, you're planting seeds into your subconscious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the law of attraction and manifesting, and there's a gazillion videos, and there's so much information on that. But there's obviously there's a process. So, with that example, in the formless world, it's instant. It's almost instant, or maybe even the quantum realm, and a lot of people feel that manifesting, as we become more aware, and we are aligning more to our, and remembering what we can do as human beings, evolving, coming full spectrum, coming more online. I'm trying to avoid all the new agey terminology, become more ascended and downloads, and it's convenient, but but what I'm trying to say is that as a species, you can speed up the process of manifestation but also as a planetary being, it's also facilitating that. So, if that makes sense. So if you, I don't want to use the ascension sort of.
I think the opposite of ascension is to go within.
Yeah, well,
because that's an external concept, isn't it? But whereas what you speak into so well, and I think what I also sort of define as my belief set, is that ditch all that new age crap and go within, and don't rely on needing the light as an external thing coming into your world to change how you feel. Find it from within and go into your own darkness, knowing that you have full command of your reality, and you can find your happiness without needing an external thing or a light source from somewhere else, or for the world around you to change.
Yeah.
You find it in you, right?
Yeah. I mean, because the real inward journey is acknowledging both the light and the darkness and the shadow self, and acknowledging that we all have that within us.
Yeah.
And what the I suppose the new age community is good at is just focusing on the bliss, love, and light.
Yeah.
It's got to be all positive. And then there's nothing wrong per se with that, but at the same time, you don't want to be doing and not acknowledging the other aspects of your being, because then you're not getting full integration. You're what do they call it when you're bypassing? Yeah, the whole
spiritual bypassing
is a thing.
That's a thing.
And I know I've done it, and that's the problem is that you don't heal that. You don't actually get down to the root cause.
What's an example, before we necessarily explain that, what a different kind of bypassing might be in physical life?
How do you mean?
Well,
like
one comes to mind, like taking drugs, for instance.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, distractions and numbing and not... Look, I'm no expert, because, we're all a work in process. And I was saying, just this morning to you and Bridget, that... what was I saying? I just lost that thought. The only way is through it. So this is what I was going to say. Sometimes in this lifetime, we don't heal those traumas. The karmic aspect of ourselves.
Oh, that's what you were saying to Penny.
I was the same to Penny.
Yeah, you're saying to Penny, and when she was talking...
I would say every human being on the planet has got challenges in their life, but there'll be ones that... There'll be like significant challenges. The ones that keep coming up. And those are the ones that are specific to you, and those are the ones that you need to work on. I know that I have them. I know that the friends that are close to me have them, and they're aware of them. And we're all, just trying to do our best to sort of work our way through that. So on that level, you can't really avoid it, but we're very good at avoiding it.
Well, I'll go back
because it's difficult. It's difficult to be vulnerable. It's difficult to acknowledge. It's an ego thing as well. It's difficult to say you're wrong, or that to break down that construct, to disintegrate, and then to reintegrate. People don't want to look at their bad shit. They don't.
No, it's true. They don't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know someone who has recently gotten into escapism in the form of, now that they're free and they've left their previous situation or environment, they're free to go smoke dope and hang out with mates and totally get high all the time. And that's a form of life bypass, right? Because you're not facing the things that have been stress to you that maybe if you dealt with, you wouldn't feel the need to do that stuff. And I think we do this right down to the food we eat, as like that idea of comfort food, and right down to maybe if you have late nights and you watch Netflix or YouTube all night because you don't want to deal with maybe some of the thoughts and feelings and the progress that your life is taking. There's so many little things we do, which is a form of bypass rather than going within and dealing with stuff. Yeah. And so it is too that when it comes to that kind of new age concept of whether it's chanting or meditation or getting help from another source, that you go into that in a kind of bypass method. Now, I say that carefully because one of the things that we might mention today is what we can do in times like this is seeking help. So this is going to sound contradictory, but I'm talking the difference between seeking help and relying on a certain method of help is an important distinction. I remember listening to one of my favorite shows that I've mentioned before is the Joe Rogan Experience, right?
Oh, I never heard of Joe Rogan.
No, not a lot of people have. But he talked about how some people would frequently go on, was it ayahuasca or something like that? One of the ones where you find you're approached by little elves or men, and it's like people consistently talk about that type of, I think it was DMT. That kind of DMT trip, or you're approached by the nature god or something. And after, there was this one guy, the guy was talking about, a friend of his, after so many trips, the elves or the gods approached him in the trip and said, "Hey, you don't need to come back, okay?
We've had enough of you."
It was sort of
like you're
starting to rely on this.
Yeah.
And there's real truth in that. And I think
it's a crutch. Yeah.
When it comes to the New Age community, we see people relying on their chanting or relying on their angel figures and praying to this or that ascended master.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of people tuning in to hear about 5D frequency upgrades and downloads and all that sort of stuff from that spiritual kind of dogma. And I think what it is a form of bypass. But that stuff can be had in balance too, and you can seek inspiration from within and ask for guidance and all that kind of thing, and maybe you believe in your own guides, but you've got to start standing on your own 2 feet at some point and believe in yourself too, don't you, and deal with things.
Well, the word that came up for me, which is the buzzword of the last few years, I was going to say last decade, but it hasn't been that long, is sovereign.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that's been a huge thing.
Especially the last couple of years.
What does it mean? Yeah, that's what I mean. What does it mean to be sovereign? So, in a way, what you're describing is that's handing your energy, handing your power over to something else, to a deity, to a god, to a dogma, to ideology.
Yeah.
So you're always looking without. When, we talked about this, like the inward journey of knowing that you have it all within you. And it's about remembering it so that you're operating from that point. But I get what you say. You start relying on the outside things, which is nothing wrong with that inherently. I mean, if that's your journey and that's your path, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
If that's the experience that you need to go through. And but I've always believed. And Penny said this as well. You just want to know the truth. Well, like, what's the truth? Like the undistorted, unfiltered truth.
Yeah.
And I think nature is very good with that because the nature doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't deceive. The ocean doesn't deceive. The energy of a tree, it doesn't distort. Doesn't mean that things aren't there are not dangerous or not going to kill you, but you know where you're at. There's no sort of manipulation and ill intentions, and it's saying one thing and behaving in a different way. So I think that's where nature is a really good leveler in terms of as George Cavassalis, there's the man-made world and then there's the other world. It's like where all that shit and drama doesn't exist. When you're walking along a beach and you got no technology, you're not listening to the news. That doesn't exist. The man-made world doesn't exist. If there might be other people around, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. If you're alone in nature. So, and I think we forget that. Yeah. As a simple way of just connecting and just grounding yourself and centering yourself.
Yeah.
And getting a break from it all.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who look for nature to reconnect. Maya, you like just taking walks, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't say much.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say we sort of forgot about Maya in here a little bit.
It's all good. It's all good.
That's what a good producer does.
Yeah.
Leading all this into what we've been through in the last little while, and we always do that little thing. We make our little show notes and make some points that we think are useful for listeners. And we've titled this little section, "What Can We Do in Times Like This?" And there's seven things to explore here. And I wanted to preface the first one with what I said about not contradicting, because the first one is ask Source, your guides, universe, your higher self for help, guidance and support, but not in a spiritual bypass way. I think it's fair, isn't it?
No, just your connection to what you believe is spirituality. What you believe, I call it the all-creating life force, universe, whatever you got to have some sort of label, but when you're actually connecting, it's not, you can't put it into it because it's intangible. But it's that, it's connecting to your inner wisdom, basically. So asking yourself, at times like this, if you're going through a tough time, or if you're seeking guidance, or if you're seeking, it's, and it also gets you to connect in with yourself, to check in as well.
That's true. So number 2, be open to this guidance in whatever form it takes.
Yeah. So if you're going through something, you're seeking some guidance, whatever it is, just be open to the fact. I'm not saying you're going to hear this voice. I'm talking about real stuff, like you're driving along and you see a sign on the side of a truck, and that gives you the answer. Or you're reading a magazine, if magazines are still around, and you read an article and it's like, I was just thinking about that, and that's you'll know. Or you're talking to a friend and you get some sort of instant sort of realization or epiphany. That's being open to all channels, in whatever form. So I'm not saying you're sitting there meditating and I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting. It can come at any time. So
that's
being
right.
Open
it
to
doesn't
that.
have to come in the form that
be
you
open
expect.
to what and what you expect. Open your expectations up. Yeah,
that's nice. That's really nice. Number 3, surrender to what it is you're greater. Surrender to what it is.
I don't know
your
what I wrote
greater
there.
being, to your soul, I think is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So you got your human self with all your problems and your ego mind. Sometimes it's comforting just to surrender to your soul. I've said this last night, that I truly believe that there is that part of me that's looking after me on that level, and yet there are other times when I'm just completely consumed in my human drama and problems. But there are times when I do feel like there's a plan, there's a grand design, call it what you will. There's an order to things. There really is.
Number 4, let go of what you think you know. Be open to new possibilities.
Yeah, I like that.
How is that different from the other one? In terms of being in whatever form it takes.
Well, we talk about your belief systems. We talk about your blind spots, the way you view reality, your echo chamber, all that sort of stuff. So we like to say we know things, which is coming from the ego. Well, I know this, and I'm pretty sure. I hesitate to use the word "I know" because it opens me up to other possibilities. So that's what that's really saying. So you get out of your own way.
Okay.
You break down, because we all have them. We all have these programs, things that we believe are absolutely true. Things are the way they are, and yet, it's being open to, just being curious and being open. The people that are really stuck in.
I was just thinking that.
This is the way it is, and it's always been this way, and this is what I've been taught. And then someone has a completely other opinion, then that's okay. It's like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you've got a point.
Maybe there's a different way to skin this cat.
Yeah, because there always is.
Yeah.
So
this is a great one. This one really brings people together from different faiths and beliefs. Pray and set intentions of what you do want and what you would like to happen. Pray and set intentions. Yeah, not enough people are doing that, eh? A lot of people, I think, and I've been guilty of this too, coast along in life, complaining potentially about what's happening to them without really setting intentions of what they want anyway. So, what's that old saying? It's something like, make a plan or plans will be made for you. Make a decision or a decision will be made for you. Well, pray and set your intentions of what you want to happen, or things will happen for you. Because if you don't have a clear super objective, how can you know where you're going? How can you know what you want? How can you achieve anything without a sense of desire of where you want to go and what you would like to happen today that leads into that?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I was talking with someone just the other day, and we were talking about the new year and making goals and stuff and all that kind of intentions, new intentions and stuff. And we were talking about how, like, have a more long-term goal to look forward to, but then reverse engineer that and have all the set little goals to reach that goal, and then making sure you celebrate those little goals, because those are important too to reach that higher, more long-term goal.
That's a crucial component.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
Like, did that person have an example about it? Because finding little steps towards the bigger one is massive, actually.
Oh, well, actually, I said this to them more, and we were just talking about, like, what, the new year and, setting goals for ourselves. And it's just a way that, makes sense in my head, a way of setting goals is just to have a more long-term one, and then, reverse engineer that goal, I guess, and, like, what have I got to do to get to that, and make little goals that are more achievable, that will, reach that higher, bigger goal you have.
Well, what's nice about that too is if you're looking at it from that perspective, you're saying, if I'm here and I've achieved this goal, what were all the little things I needed to do to get here? And then go do them too.
Yeah.
Well, what's nice about that is you're putting yourself in that sort of quantum space of having imagined it happened as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
well, you need the big overarching goal. And sometimes that goal is too big. You can't achieve that in a day. It could be a grand goal, so you got to break it down into little achievable steps. So it's like 1,000 miles begins with one step, right?
Yeah.
And then you celebrate those little wins to keep you motivated. So you break it. It's totally true. Yeah. Because the big goal can feel too overwhelming.
Yeah.
I agree.
So you've got to you make it into manageable goals. And that way you begin. So it's the daily practice of, and that's the hard part for humans. It's the daily.
Unlike us aliens.
Yeah. Because we want it right now. We want everything now, and we want what we want, and it's a process, and it can be hard work, and it's all that stuff.
It's funny you should say that, because the next one is trust the process.
Yeah.
That the universe is always conspiring for your highest good.
Yeah. It's the whole, trusting the whole process, the bigger picture, the grand scheme of things, and sometimes those, the rejection is the redirection. The setbacks are you're not ready for what you want, or you there are other missing pieces, and the good old you can't join the dots ahead of time. So if in 5 years' time you get to that destination or goal, know that there was a process. Obviously there was a process, but sometimes you can look backwards basically to see how that happened, but sometimes it's hard to see the next step, but you just take whatever the next best step is. So it's trusting the process, and I like that. The universe is conspiring. I say that a lot, even if something goes bad, right. Even if I don't get what I want, and things don't work out as expected, I trust that in the grand scheme of things that it's still working out for my highest good, rather than going, because I've done this, beating myself up. Oh, but that should have worked, and now what? And but I don't see. It's like chess. It's like there's all these moves ahead of time that get you there. It's just that maybe you're not ready to see it yet. So if that makes sense,
it does. And number 7, be in the receptive mode, and also feel worthy and deserving of receiving help, support, love, abundance, kindness. Ooh, that's tough for some people.
Yeah,
really tough. Being receptive
open to receiving it.
Is equivalent in some people's minds as being vulnerable, and that's not a problem unless you identify vulnerable as a weakness. So being receptive is to some people being weak. You know, and feeling worthy and deserving of receiving support, help, love, and so on is for some people another kettle of fish of difficulty because they don't feel worthy of receiving.
Yeah.
So that one can be a bit of a mind screw, can't it? Because it's a 2-in-1 hit there. Be in a receptive mode, feel worthy. Be in a receptive mode, which can be akin to allow yourself to be vulnerable, and people are afraid to do that. And then say, but all at the same time, I'm worthy of and deserving of receiving help, support, love, abundance, and kindness. If you don't think you're worthy of receiving abundance, good luck ever saving any money. You know?
Yeah. Well, you'll be surprised how many people self-sabotage themselves.
Yeah.
And they say that they want something, and yet they're actually sabotaging it. So they're not open to actually getting it.
And what about those people who sabotage it but enjoy the addiction of sabotaging it?
Exactly.
How many people do you know act like, you know, they want an amazing Christmas, and then when it arrives, they go, it's always like this.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
You guys don't treat me right. You know.
Yeah.
Make themselves a victim.
Mm.
No. And they know that's not right. And they know that it's a behavior they engage in. And they can see it objectively, but they still do it.
Mm.
And I think about what our different behaviors and patterns are around this time of year, and I think it's really relevant. For me too, you know, there are things that in examining, I guess, certain special dates that mean certain things, like what does Christmas mean to you? Because here we are recording this just post-Christmas, prior to the New Year. What does the New Year mean to you? Do you have sadness around this time because it's not perfect? Is it not? You know, I mean, I have to deal with the fact that my parents are dead. And every Christmas morning I wake up and I say, oh, geez Louise, this is never going to be the same again without them. And that's tough when everyone's telling me, oh, I caught up with my parents. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge where I have to find and make new habits. And I've got a little boy now, so he needs to have new habits of what a happy Christmas is. Not because we have to celebrate Christmas, but because I can't afford, because I love him, I can't imagine him growing up having dysfunction about a certain time of year before, you know, it's such an innocent soul having to deal with the fact that a parent goes, maybe I don't really like this time of year. But as soon as he comes to understand what Christmas is, there'll be more Christmas decorations in here than you could imagine, because I want him to enjoy this time of year and to welcome it because of what it really means, which is the understanding of the beginnings of seasons and marking points of celebration and why it is important to celebrate. I mean, we're about to also start the whole New Year resolution process. How many people do you know have tried to commit? That sounds like the beginning of something bad. Commit to a new process at the time of year where they say, I'm going to give up smoking. I'm going to start the new exercise regime. I mean, what's the point? You could do that anytime. But as I mentioned to you the other night, so it is that it marks a time in our calendar because, as you said, we all involve ourselves in a calendar one way or another. I mean, you know what the time is right now. You know how to set an appointment and make it. We can talk about time being a construct, a false construct of time, of reality, but it's something that we use to make appointments and get shit done. And so you've got to live in both of those understandings and those two worlds, and you've got to enjoy and mark the processes that come up in our calendar in a healthy way. And you might say to yourself, well, I can celebrate this feeling anytime. Sure, by all means, go ahead. Choose to use June as your time to start a New Year resolution for you personally. But at least honour and respect that at some point in our calendar, over traditions and eons before we were just inundated with technology, these were the times of the year that we started new ways of thinking. And maybe it was more appropriate to the Northern Hemisphere because they were mid-winter, that we say, here we are in the time of our darkest hour and our darkest month and our coldest time, where we sit and think what we will do and plan for the spring and the summer. and how to live out autumn and preparing for the winter again. So whatever you do and however you do it, there's nothing wrong in marking those moments as new beginnings or new endings.
Yeah. It's convenient though, isn't it, to have this pause, this collective pause, where everyone's on holiday, in this part of the world anyway.
Yeah.
And you celebrate the Christmas, and then you get the New Year, and it's the fresh start to the year, and you've got motivation, and you're recharged, and all the all the programs support that, and all the media and everything. So yeah, I get it. I get it. So I suppose as a collective, we buy into that, and it becomes a part of our reality, like a lot of other things. So. But yeah, you're right. At any point in time, you can do that in a personal level, right? Just because it's the new year, the new year could be the worst time of your life for some people because of where where you're at.
Yeah.
So it depends where you're at. But I also think it's a little bit like when you're a little bit alternative, you don't want to sort of follow the crowd. You don't sort of necessarily want to do what everyone else is doing, and so you go, I'm not going to celebrate Christmas, I'm going to be a little bit different, I'm going to be a rebel, or I'm not going to do this or that, and
that's fine. That's fine if that's what works for you,
which invariably though makes you feel a little bit as an outcast or a little bit different, because you're not joining in with everyone else.
No, all you're doing is taking an opposing side, and it still magnifies the time of year that you think you're getting away from.
Yeah.
Whereas if you phase out from it, don't say, I'm not going to do XYZ. You just don't even consider XYZ a thing.
Yeah.
Then you're phasing away from it and not giving attention to it, because it's a little bit like if you say, don't eat that biscuit, the topic is biscuit. Right? Whether it's do eat the biscuit or don't eat the biscuit, don't involve in Christmas or do involve in Christmas, the topic's still Christmas, so you're phased right into it and caught right up in it. So it's just like, just don't see the biscuit. Don't see the Christmas. Just, if you really don't want to be a part of it, phase out and find your own thing. But that's hard to do.
If all your friends and family and you get all and you're driving down the road and there's all these Christmas lights.
That's right. No, you can't live in a. Sometimes you cannot just live in a different reality as other people, because we all share the same calendar. Yeah. No, and ultimately, then therein lies the
conundrum.
The conundrum, and the fact that you can phase out from certain things that are harmful to you, or perhaps you can go within and do the inner work so that they're no longer harmful to you.
Yeah, well, what I did is I just changed my expectation, and I did an inner shift, because I was feeling a little bit crap before leading up to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, why is that? And so I was aware and awake to it, and I go, well, I'm in control. I can change it. I can just reframe it all. And I did it, and it was great. And I just focused on, because I was focusing on the things that maybe I should have been doing or should have been experiencing. This is expectations again of what constitutes a traditional Christmas or a traditional this time of the year. And I go, no, I'm fine. I'm putting too much importance on it, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
So, and that really helped. So it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're happy with what you're doing. In a sense.
I think that's true. As long as you're genuinely happy, as opposed to just feeling stink about what your topic is, whatever your thing is. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a funny one for me, because with the challenges I feel at Christmas, I also happen to do a fantastic, if I do say so myself, Santa impression. And I do it professionally, where people hire me to do Santa voiceovers, messages from Santa. And also, I have a gig once a year for a corporate company where I play Santa on their quote-unquote family day, but it's a Christmassy sort of a thing. And that happens several weeks before Christmas. So I'm dressed up as Santa, literally at an event in a Santa's grotto. And I'm not an old man, but I'm playing an old man, but not quite that old. But Merry Christmas, young fella. You know, and everyone's having a good time, and you take photos with Santa, and families are there, and presents are given out. So it's an irony for me that I do that and light up the lives of these kids, you know. And we've got all these people that join us, and there's an elf that's with me, and it's all the whole thing. And then I go and have my Christmas. And my Christmas has to deal with my issues.
Yeah.
And those are rapidly departing my reality, which is I'm happy to tell you, because as much as I miss my parents, you know, I've got this little guy now, this little boy, and so he's going to have great Christmases. But you know what was really cool was on Christmas Day we put on this fantastic playlist, which was the playlist we had during Bridget's birthing process. And just to, I guess, finish on this as one sort of big story from us, because, you know, I mentioned at the start, we've got a little boy now. Her contractions began and labour began, and it was a 50 hour process. It started at 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and at 9 a.m. on Saturday, there was a little boy fresh out of the oven lying on her chest that she was bonding with, and it took 50 hours. And in that playlist was all this beautiful music that we had to get us in the right zone. And so we were up for 48 hours, 50, I guess, well, even longer, because then after he was born,
you couldn't give up then and fall asleep.
No, but by 12 o'clock, 1 p.m, we've got to go to bed.
Yeah.
And then we were up, but and there's a little boy sleeping next to us. But in that playlist was all this music that was meaningful and deep and relaxing and stuff. And we were listening to that playlist on Christmas Day, on shuffle, on random, you know. And at the moments where I was like, oh, I miss my mum, the one song that came on that I played at her funeral came up.
Wow.
And then there was this other moment that I was talking to my sister, and she's in Brunei, halfway across the world. And then the song for my dad came up at that time. I was like, wow, I really felt their presence. Because because here's the rub, here's the thing, kids. Spirit beings control playlists.
I knew it.
Especially when they're set to shuffle. So I just thought that was an uncanny coincidence. And I've really felt their presence during that time. So, you know, even if you're alone, it's funny how they can be in your presence, even if they're not here with you. And that can continue on through the year. And it's funny, like every time I've spoken to my sister recently, it's always a video call, right, because she's overseas. And somehow music's playing in the background and that song comes on. I swear. Wow. Last time it was at a cafe. I don't control the cafe's playlist, but spirit beings do. there's the truth. There's your takeaway. No, but that was fascinating, eh?
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's special, I'd say.
Yeah. But I think you're right. It's you're learning to recreate or reinvent what it means to you.
Yeah, that's the actual takeaway.
Yeah.
Not that your Spotify playlist is controlled by ghosts.
That's what I got from you. But that's pretty cool. That's cool having those moments.
Yeah.
And being aware of it as well.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us. Thanks for picking up and listening again. If it's been a while since we've turned up on your podcast thread or whatever app you listen to us.
Yeah. We were in a liminal space.
We were in a liminal space.
And our lives were going in different directions, and
we were doing different things.
And we were doing different things. And I think it's about also celebrating the spaces in between and the process, the organic nature of life.
Well, the nice thing is, even though we're in different spaces, good friends stay good friends for a lot of, through all of that, you know, and good conversations, which was the birth of this podcast, was still had, and it's great.
Yeah, I think the thing is that we were obviously still connecting, and we could have switched on the mics. We just didn't record what we were talking about.
No, and I just didn't feel it. Like there's a different energy that wells up that says, hey, let's record this. And then we do that. Yeah. But sometimes you just, like, I always think the neat thing about this podcast is we're as real as you can be. And that doesn't change when the button the record button stops.
Yeah, we do. We try to just speak as raw and as real.
But there is a different
and
energy to
unscripted.
doing a podcast than there is to just talking.
Yeah,
and
sure,
that's the energy to want to make a thing for others as well.
Yeah,
But sometimes you just go, no, we'll leave it for a while, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, being okay with that as well.
Yeah.
Being okay with the fact that, not having the expectations and one of our closing notes was trusting the process and seeing the grand picture and surrendering to that
Yeah.
and not being thinking that you need to be doing something. Yeah.
Well, our website's down currently, but we still have our little space on Instagram, don't we?
Yeah. I haven't looked at that for a long time.
Well, what's if you want to find us on Instagram, you can, which is
it's
Reality
just
Hub.
at realityhub.love. Yeah.
Oh, is the Instagram handle. Cool.
Pretty sure it is.
Great.
I should start you guys a TikTok.
Oh.
Promote you on there.
Oh, you kids.
Well, I'll just say this. I have a sort of a love-hate relationship with, what do you call it, social media.
Yeah.
So in one way
Yeah.
it's very useful.
Yeah.
And obviously you can connect and to your audience and I use it as well because it connects
Yeah.
with the people that I resonate with, and it's like anything. It's a double-edged sword.
My hate relationship with it is because I recognize the way people have used it with a sort of a false
Liver King.
no, but with a sort of a false projection of who they are. So maybe the way we can love it is go, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Just because other people have done that doesn't mean that we don't.
Yeah.
So if you see us on YouTube,
I'll be honest.
social media.
There was a period where I was posting, stuff that resonated with. I felt like I had something to say, and in the past few months, it's laying dormant because we haven't recorded. But also on my own private Instagram account, I just didn't feel like it was right. Wasn't in that space, and being okay with that, because I think there's that thing of I got to put content out there and I got to just record anything or it's great, but I was honoring the fact that no, I don't. I'm just not in that space.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of having to share something. So that in itself for me was like that's a real moment of, well, I haven't posted for 6 months or whatever it is, which is good because it also gives you a break from it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
Gives you
good.
the space.
It feels good.
Mm.
I'm glad. Glad you haven't posted when you haven't felt like it. Feels right.
Yeah, it feels right.
Anyway, you might catch a posting of this, so don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, like they say on YouTube. We're not even on YouTube. All right, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Are we? Oh, yeah, we
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
I forgot. Yeah. Well, as always, stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and be well, everyone. Be well, my fellow humans.
I feel like I'm being well already.